Hey there, beautiful brown girl family. So excited to be here for another episode of Brown Girl Boss. Y'all, welcome to the replay for those of you who are tuning into the replay, and welcome to the live for those of you who are tuning into the live. So excited to be here tonight. We are going to have a really, really fun time as we share tonight. So while we get ready for that, I want to make sure that as you all are logging on, that I know who you are. Okay, so if you will, go ahead and introduce yourself in the comments for me. Let me know where you are watching from. If this is your very first time hanging out on BBG TV, specifically on Brown Girl Boss, I want to know that as well. And go ahead and tag some of your friends, y'all. We are in for a treat tonight. We're talking to filmmaker Nailah Jefferson, and we're going to be talking about that journey and what that looks like, what that sounds like. How do you use your platform to create art that can really make a difference? So if that is something that you are interested in, somebody you know is interested in that, your cousin's cousin, all of the people, tag them, get them in here so that they are able to hang out with us. Okay. So again, go ahead and introduce yourself in the comments. Let us know where you are watching from. So here at Beautiful Brown Girls, we are really intentional about making sure that we make connections, right? So we have over 50,000 members across the country, as well as abroad. And we really want to make sure that we give you the opportunity to make those connections. So that's why I ask you to let people know where you're watching from, because you may find somebody that's in your area. Now you got a brunch buddy, and it's a whole thing, right? So go ahead and get that done for me over there in the comments. So I see y'all getting in here. Let me do a couple shout outs as y'all are coming in. So Cherry said, hey ladies. Hey Cherry, glad to have you with us tonight. Absolutely. October, where have you been, sis? We have been missing you, honey. So October is in New Orleans. Our guest is actually from New Orleans, October. So tag some of your people. Tell them to get in here so that they can be a part of this conversation today. We also have Shakita is here from Knoxville. So welcome to the party, Shakita. Glad to have you here and ready to participate in our show for tonight. So as you all know, for those of you who are always hanging out with us, y'all, this is family. Like, this is what we do here. We just want to really hang out and have a good time. So that's the vibe that we got going on in here, okay? So we really want to stick with that. Again, go ahead and tag some of your friends, share the broadcast on your page. I know that we're going to have a really fun time tonight. So some of you may be saying, girl, what is this? Like, what are we watching? So welcome and good evening. Welcome to BBG TV Brown Girl Boss. This is our virtual platform that allows us to connect with other like-minded women who are on a mission to live their very best lives. We come to you weekly with programming that will challenge and inspire you and get the conversation going to connect with other beautiful brown girls like yourself. My name is Kimberland, and I am coming to you from Mexico City, Mexico. Actually wrapping up my time here in Mexico, y'all. So it's kind of bittersweet, but definitely still loving every single day that I have left here. So one more time, let me know where you are watching from. If you'll go ahead and drop that into the comments for us, and go ahead and share. And I'm actually going to pause right now. Y'all, I can't do two things at one time, y'all. So give me just a second. Let me go ahead and share the broadcast on my page so that my people are able to come and hang out with us as well. So let me see, here we go, and boom, shared. Okay, so if y'all will go ahead and do that same thing so that we can get folks in here. The comments. Okay, so again, I want y'all to make sure you're making connections in the comments, right? Because that's where the people are. But you'll also have an opportunity to ask some questions of our guests. So go ahead and get those questions ready as well so that we are able to kind of just get everything from Nailah that she has to offer us. So today's show is really special for me, y'all, because Nailah and I actually went to high school together. So I've had the opportunity to amplify recently some of my former classmates from high school and just really love on them with all of the amazing things that they are doing. So I already mentioned that Nailah is an acclaimed filmmaker, director. She has her own independent fiction and nonfiction film production company called Perspective Pictures. Her work has been aired on Netflix, HBO, Cinemax, Urban Movie Channel. She's been a part of the Tribeca Film Institute, Black Public Media, Egg Film, Chicken and Egg Films. Like, she's been all over, y'all. She is doing the thing. I have quietly just kind of been peeping it out behind the scene as I've been watching her do her thing. So I'm so excited to be able to bring her on here today so that we can talk about this journey. So let me get her in here. Miss Nailah. Hello there, beautiful.
Hey, Kimberlyn. Great to be here. My beautiful girls. I'm here for this. Yes.
We are excited to have you. I'm so glad that you took up this invitation to hang out with me and just chat a little bit about what you've been up to, child, for the past few decades.
I was saying, do we want to say how many years it's been? You know, it's kind of that many years.
You look good though, girl. So I don't know. Look, it's been a minute.
It's been over 20.
Yeah. Yes, it has. We graduated at the turn of the century, y'all, and have been holding it down. Okay. So happy to reconnect with you and just give you an opportunity to share with our beautiful Brown Girls community some of the stuff that you've been doing. So if you will, kind of just start off by sharing how you even got into filmmaking. It feels like it is an arena that is kind of out of touch for some of us, very glamorous, like all the things. So how did you land in this area?
Well, you know what's funny? Remember at prep? I don't know if you remember this. Okay, so everyone, we went to Xavier University Preparatory High School, excuse me. Now known as St. Catherine Drexel, but that's a whole nother story we could talk about offline. So anyway, at prep, our last year, I feel like they had kind of a news show. I don't know if you remember this.
Yes, but I do.
They had two hosts. I don't even remember who my host was. But they had two hosts, right? Hey, Jandra. Oh, that's my girl. That's my girl from church. Hey, Jandra. I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying hey to people as they pop up.
You can. It's okay. We're relaxed here. It's family, honey. Sometimes you got to do a shout out in the middle of what you're talking about. But go ahead.
But they had that show, and I was one of the hosts. And I always thought I would get into journalism, right? And so as I was applying to schools, I was looking at different communications programs, and I saw that film and TV could be a major. And I was like, that's what I really want to do. So I headed over from New Orleans to Boston University, which was, night and day, so cold, so very white. I went to school there, and I took the TV course, and I still didn't know, the TV track. I still didn't know exactly where I was going to land. I didn't even know then that I wanted to be a director. I just knew this was the field that I wanted to be in, and not necessarily for glamorous purposes. It was more like I like storytelling, and I got to intern on a couple of different documentaries when I was in school. And I went out to LA after school, and I knew LA wasn't for me. I really preferred the East Coast. I spent some more time in New York, and I had a chance to work at Lee Daniels Entertainment. This was back in, this is right after Katrina.
Wow.
This is right after Katrina. This was, right before. It was like 2004, 2005. I worked there, and that's when I really learned there are no rules to filmmaking, right? Especially independent filmmaking. It's really scrappy. You raise money however you can. You get access to actors any way you can. And it's just really about the story. And that kind of made me fall deeper in love with filmmaking. And when I came home, I was like, now it's after Katrina. I'm going to make a Katrina documentary. Well, Spike Lee beat me to it. That's okay. I know, damn Spike Lee. So some years passed, and I continued to work, but I got the chance to make my own film in 2010 when the BP oil spill happened down here in the Gulf of Mexico. I was working for a company, I won't say their name, but they wanted me to make a film, but they were running out of money. And so I told myself, you can work for yourself for free. And so
Mm.
that's when I launched my own production company. And I worked on Vanishing Pearls. It's a story about fishermen in Point Lahash, Louisiana, which is a Black oyster community. And just these fishermen trying to get back on their feet in the aftermath of the BP oil spill. We shot for about 4 years. I have to say that unfortunately, fishing never came back to normal for them, and it still hasn't. And we're more than, 12 years out. But that's when I really fell in love, and I realized that you could use filmmaking as a voice, because one thing that came out of that film is that fishermen were able to use it as proof that the claims that BP was giving them were not sufficient, and that just covered 2 years. It should, in fact, stretch out. Now, of course, they didn't pay them up to 10 years, but they were able to say that we need to be made whole. And so Mr. Byron, who was the protagonist of that film, we still talk today. He says, "I'm your adopted uncle, huh?" And I mean, really, he is. But he still tells me that film was useful in that way. And so going forward, I always want to make films and tell stories that empower the people in the communities that are willing to give me their time and basically their lives.
Yeah, I have so many questions based on what you just say, and I think I'm gonna work backwards. So one of the things that you just said was that these people have trusted you with their story, and I'm really interested in understanding how stories come to your attention and how you make the decision about which stories you're going to actually create something about to amplify.
Right. Well, I'll just say this. Every filmmaker is different. Some people will read the paper and pick out stories. Now, of course, social media is a great way to find content. But for me, it's been very interesting. Stories have come to me. And I very much believe that kind of my walk and my path is it's a spiritual walk. I talk to God about everything. That's how I approach my stories and just even my relationship with the people in the films. I never want to be exploitative or anything like that. But for Vanishing Pearls, it was a friend of mine who knew Mr. Byron and said, "These fishermen really need help. Why don't you go down there and talk to them?" The film that I'm working on now, Commuted, about Danielle Metz, a woman here in New Orleans who in 1993 was sentenced to triple life plus 20 years for nonviolent drug offenses. She was released in 2016 by President Obama. She was granted clemency after 23 years. But I met Danielle in church, and we were introduced by our pastor. There's the film that I made about Descendants and Descendants of the Tulsa Race Massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And again, that was brought to me. And then there's another project that I'm working on. So it's really interesting. I'm not saying that I don't go after stuff, but that's just not the stuff that has kind of blossomed and really been successful.
Yeah, it almost sounds like your projects have chosen you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you look for that says to you, okay, this is it. This is something I need to dig in on. Because I can't imagine, especially like you mentioned social media a moment ago, there are so many things that you could dig into and spend your time on. So what's the magic recipe where you're like, this needs to have Nailah's imprint on this right here?
It's so funny too, because I'll get into a story, and then once you're in it, more stuff will break open. You're like, oh my God. So for instance, with I'm working on one film right now. I can't talk too much about it, but I'll just say kind of surface.
Give us the exclusive, whatever you can release.
It's about a Black woman who was considered maybe the first supermodel. A lot of people argue that she was big in the 60s and 70s, but as I researched her, this woman her story was made to be in a film. Just the way she lived her life. She was, if anyone's seen Mahogany, people say that her story was really used as kind of the basis for Mahogany. She was, she grew up in middle America during segregation. She goes over to Europe and she's a big star. And at that time, there aren't that many African-American people kind of living this glamorous life. Not only that, this woman she's just really an artist in her own right. She wrote, she had a book she was working on, she had these short stories, and she also just had this beautiful, beautiful art that is amazing to bring to life in the film. So just people like that have so much like texture, you know, great. And when I think about somebody like Danielle Metz, her story is just worth being told. People need to open to their eyes to mass incarceration, especially to mothers who have been in prison. A lot of times people focus on men and what's going on with them. But when you have a woman who's taken away from her kids, she's 26, they're 7 and 3, and they have to grow up without her. And in their minds, they're thinking they have to grow up forever without her, right? It's by the grace of God that she's made it home. But for someone like Danielle, I mean, again, like I said, people need to know about this great injustice. But then to look at this woman and a lot of the stories about internally how she made it through, how are you able to keep your mind every day, right? She's just such a force. And then to see what she's doing now, like it truly, like it blesses, it's just, and I tell her this all the time. I was like, I don't know how this film is going to do. But for me, the biggest blessing is to be able to see you from 2017 when we met, and she was only months, just months removed from being released from prison, to now when she's soon graduating from college. She's speaking all over the nation. All of these. So I'll just say, I don't know what the magic whatever is, but I think a lot of these people I really admire. A lot of times they have something in them that I wish I had in myself, and that's kind of what I dig into. And again, they're just stories that I truly believe should live on. And I think stories that we haven't heard before. I like to tell, stories like that.
Yeah. So talk to me more about the people part of this, right? Because I can imagine that some of these stories, whether you're talking about fishermen or whether you're talking about Miss Danielle and her journey of what it felt like to go through this process, I can imagine that people may be very guarded when you come to them to learn about their stories and their experiences. So what is that like for you as a filmmaker coming in? You have this interest. Hey, I want to tell the world about your stuff. What is that process like to actually get them over that hump?
Yeah, well, okay, I have this one up on Spike Lee. Just this one. So the fishermen that I covered in my film, they were asked to be, and when the levees broke, but and this is a story they had. Mr. Lee, don't get mad at me if this is wrong. But this is what I heard. Apparently, he wanted them to travel to a different marina and film them there. And they're very much like, no, we want you to come here. And, Point of Lash is kind of far. But they're like, no, we want you to come here. So sometimes showing up is a part of it. Mr. Byron was the president of the Louisiana Oystermen's Association at the time. So he was the mouthpiece of his community. And when I was able to talk to him, and he just, again, I don't know why he was able to trust me. He then was able to open up other people within the community and have them speak to me and share their stories. I think we have to realize as filmmakers, because a lot of times people just want the story and they want to leave, or they want the story and they're not thinking about the fact that you really are kind of crafting someone's life to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And you really have to put, like you said, so much trust in you. And so for me, it's important to be collaborative. What do you want to say? What do you want people to know about you? What is the message? Because they have to live with this forever. I'll move on and work on a different film, but this film will follow them forever. So how they're portrayed really, really matters. And so with Mr. Byron, I learned that even more so with Danielle. Her case was one where she had so many people testifying against her, saying that she was something she wasn't. And so I imagine that builds some type of mistrust.
For sure.
So with me, I'm coming out of nowhere. Of course, I have the word of the pastor of our church, Bishop Love, but she doesn't really know me. And I did jump in and say, hey, let's do this. And she's kind of like, hold up.
Right. Who sent you?
Hold up. Right. Hold up. And I would say of all of the films that I've worked on, this has been the biggest learning and growth opportunity just from a human standpoint, because
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of practices in documentary filmmaking, like I said, that are just not helpful to the people who are in the film. If I go back and I look at how this career started, not just, I mean, just the field of documentary filmmaking, a lot of times it comes from anthropology. It's white people traveling to exotic locations, taking their stories,
Mm-hmm.
right, and prospering from them.
Mm.
And even though I'm a Black woman in the field now, I need to know what the foundation is. I need to know what the roots are, because I don't want to perpetuate that type
Right.
of harm. And so, particularly with this film, I had to kind of, because Danielle asked a lot of questions, so then I had to ask myself a lot of questions, and then I had to ask the industry a lot of questions.
Mm.
And so we approached a lot of things differently in this film. From just, I was collaborative with the fishermen. I think I've been even more collaborative in needing to communicate with Danielle. And there's some other things that go into that, as far as kind of profit sharing, things that people don't want to talk about in documentary. But I mean, again, if this is their story and the film, because sometimes documentaries don't make profits, but if the film is going to make a profit, why should the filmmakers be the only people to see
Right.
it? So there are different things like that, and they're learning lessons that I'll take with me going forward. And then even with the documentary about the model, I'm speaking with her family, and I mean, they've been quiet about her story for almost 40 years. So
Wow.
it hasn't been the easiest, but again, just the learning people has been so worth it, because
Mm.
there are certain things that you can take away from that, just life lessons that, can help me in a film, but really just help me in life, and get to know people better and understand them better and be more compassionate and empathetic. And I think at the end of the day, it's what it's about. I mean, there's the work, but then there's also like, how are you developing as a human being?
Yeah. And so when you mentioned, for instance, like the foundations of the documentary industry, I don't know if I'm using the right
That's
words.
fine. I think
Um,
that's
but when you mentioned how that got started and how you are handling that differently, it kind of gives me goosebumps a little bit, because I work like in DEI spaces, and I'm always talking about holding space for people of color and making sure that we're protecting our stories and protecting each other. And I don't think I ever really made the connection that, as a filmmaker, what a powerful
Yeah,
tool that you have in your hands to
yeah.
be able to, like you said, craft other people's perspective of a story, and how that has to be treated so delicately. I don't think I've ever really thought about that, in what that looks like for those who are making documentaries and sharing these stories.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I learned, like my first day at BU in communications class. They're like, "You all are the gatekeepers of information," and that
Wow.
goes, that's mostly everyone in the communications industry, and that's so true. But we have a lot of power, and that can be scary for the
Mhm.
films. You can edit them any type of way, and a lot
Yeah.
it's meant to serve as the filmmaker, or to serve as some type of entertainment value that, again, does not help people in the long run, when it comes down to just how are they going to live with this film, how are they going to live with this piece of work. But yeah, it's a lot of power that you hold, because the film will go farther than a fisherman in Point of La Hash. He can't
Right.
maybe they can't make it across the country or to another continent, but this film can very easily travel, and there's
Mhm.
for them. So yeah, it's really important. It's really important.
Yeah, and it's almost like a catch-22, because they have been in a situation where they've kind of been hidden,
Yeah.
and now they have an opportunity for their stories to be brought into the forefront. But then I imagine that that also brings a lot of extra attention that folks may not be ready for as well. So I can't imagine what that process is like, to be able to have your story shared, and then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
now what? Now everybody knows.
Yeah. Yep. I'm actually going through that with someone now. they're sharing their story, but figuring out what part of it they want to share.
Yeah.
Because you can be very vulnerable, and you're letting everyone who watches this into that part of your life. So that's why I think, again, as like filmmakers, you have to be very sensitive to that. And sometimes you're like, oh, just tell me, this is work. And sometimes it will work for their benefit. Other times it may be just to benefit the story. So again, you have to say, who do you want to be in this process, right? How do you want them to be treated? How would I want to be treated?
Right.
But I'm actually right now, that is a conversation that I'm having with someone, and she's so sweet, and she wants to give a bit, but I let her know, it's like, I think people are going to know that you're not totally open, but that is your choice. Because you have to live with yourself.
And it's completely up to them, of course, how much they share, and how much they don't. So let me shift a little bit and ask about what it is like for you as a brown girl in these spaces. Again, a space that you said was created in a predatory nature, honestly, by white people who are going and colonizing other people's stories and then profiting. So what has it been like for you as a brown girl? Maybe some of the barriers that you've encountered, or how you've chosen to show up in your brown body in these spaces that you're just like, this is what it is.
Right. Well, I came into very kind of naive, I want to say, but I think that's sometimes the best way to come into things. I just did it for the love of it. I love storytelling. I wanted to tell this story, and I made a film. And then you think about the barriers and the gatekeepers that exist, from kind of executives at distribution companies, from people at film festivals, all of these gatekeepers that you have to get through to get your film out there into the world. And so that's, once I started kind of coming against that, that's when I realized, that's when I felt more like a brown girl in this space, because I have to convince you that this Black story has universal appeal, right?
Yeah, like people are gonna care about this.
I mean, that is the most tiring conversation. And it's, you can have so many stories about white people, white women doing the same thing over and over and over again. But your little Black story that is unique in itself, you always have to justify, how is this going to reach with the squinty eye? I don't understand. How is this going to reach like a mass audience? And then you see black titles do extremely well. It's very weird that they don't get it yet. But I would say, as my Black self, having to come up against that has been one of the difficulties I faced. But then in my mind, there's the wanting to be successful, but then in your mind, what does success really look like? And I think I have to have that conversation with myself, and just rethink that. Because of course, the world will tell you the most success is how many eyeballs are on your film. And of course, you want that. You want a big, wide audience. But then there are other things, like, was I able to really be myself? Was I able to really express myself artistically in this film? Was I able to really, get my vision into this film and tell the story that I wanted to tell? That is also success. And not having to compromise certain values, certain ideas, is very important to me. So sometimes I have to tell myself, okay, well, I'm not meant for this festival because they just don't see value in that. And that's okay. Because I do believe stories, if you put them out there, they'll find their audience. They may not find them in the 12 months that you put them out. It might take longer. But I do believe that they will find their way. And if they're stories with a real purpose, and, you're walking the path they're supposed to walk, they're going to do what they're supposed to do. Now, that's not to say I don't want a lot of people watching my films. That's not to say I don't
we still need y'all to go watch, y'all.
Right. I still want all of that. But I think that's kind of the cherry on top. I think for me, being able to really express myself. And again, like I said, not having to explain every part of the Black experience to white people as well.
Right.
Like, I was having a conversation the other day, and it was a white man I'm working with, and he didn't understand colorism, right? because he doesn't
Okay.
experience that.
Right.
He understands racism, but then he doesn't understand the nuances of colorism. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just broke it down really briefly because I'm also not about giving white people lessons every day. I can't do it. I'm not interested.
Facts.
Um, when I gave him a brief explanation, he said, "Oh, okay, okay. Well, we might have to. We just want to make sure we don't lose other audience members." Let me say, I have seen so many films where I've had to go back and do a Google search, a Wikipedia search, and that's okay. Like sometimes you just need a little bit. If it's not, if it's not going to throw you off of the story, just go do it. Go do a deep dive yourself. It's on the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
find it. You can find it. So they're
Learn
just
about somebody else's experience for once. Like
yeah,
that is okay.
right. And I also think the fact that we feel like we have to understand everybody.
Mm.
Because sometimes I'm just not gonna be able to step in your shoes. However, I can still respect your story and your experience,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
although I don't understand it. And that's okay. So, there
Mm.
are certain things that I feel like a white audience just needs to do. We don't have to break everything down for them. I'm just not doing it. I'm not interested because it just takes away from the art. So showing up as my Black self is making sure that I can freely express myself and again, not feel like I have to explain and justify my presence every time I show up.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
something we talk about all the time here is how do we show up in spaces and how do we honor the authenticity of who we are. And you're not only carrying yourself, you're also carrying other people's stories with you,
Mhm.
right? So thinking about um how we comport ourselves to, I guess it goes back to what you said, like what does success look like,
Mhm.
right? Is success that I had a whole bunch of viewers, or is success that I maintained my integrity and I maintained the integrity of the people of the story that I'm covering? So
Mhm.
what I'm wondering is if you can demystify for us what a director does.
Oh,
Like what a real
right.
basic question. Like, what does a director do? Because I'll watch different things. And one of my good friends, he's into filmmaking as well.
Mhm.
And I'll say things like, the writing was horrible. And he's like, no, that was the directing. And I'm like, well, the actor was trash. And he's like, so I don't know that I really know what directors do. Can you tell us, please?
Right. Well, I can tell you what my direction experience is. As a
Okay.
whole, you were supposed to guide the vision of the project. Um, and that's why they always say visionary director, whomever, right?
Mm,
You are supposed to guide kind of what the tone and the mood and the feel of the story is. The foundation of any film that was a good story. So you might have been right. The film, it might have been trash and it didn't have any any luck because it had a bad story. But from a script, a director can say, okay, we're going to approach this scene this way. We want to make sure that this is the takeaway. We want to make sure the audience feels this emotion when they leave it, and I think that's what's for me the most fun part of directing, because like I said, you get to craft a story and really get people. Saying out loud sounds a little manipulative, but it's not. I'm not. but you get people to think in a certain way, or you get them to question things. I like that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
to ask certain questions. But a different director will approach a scene differently, and an audience can take it one way or another. I'm trying to think of like a good example. Um, no, that's not a good example. I'm trying to think of a story, like two stories that were told differently by two different directors. Well, one story, I'm so sorry, that was told differently by two different directors. Let me think of something. And then I think I can give you a better example of what a director does. But really, they guide the vision of the
Mm-hmm.
story. In documentary filmmaking, there is no script.
Right.
So you are very much, what is the journey that I want the audience to go on? Do I want it to be more emotional? Do I want it to be dramatic, mysterious? Do I want it to have humor? And you can kind of write your questions to bring out that type of story, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
guide whomever is in your film to, like I said, bring out that type of emotion. So that's the main objective of a director, and it can be difficult because there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle. um,
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of pieces. And so, filmmaking isn't easy. I tell people this all the time, but if it were easy, I feel like
Everybody
more
would do it.
people would do it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and even listening to you talk about the time commitment,
yeah.
because you
Oh
mentioned
God.
4 years, but like, what has been the longest amount of time that you've worked on a project before being able to bring it into fruition?
Going to be year 6 on Commuted. That's the film about Danielle Metz. And going into it, I was like, we're gonna knock this out in like 2 years. No, no. Especially that's an independent project, so we had to raise money.
Mm,
Oh my gosh, we've applied to so many grants, but they've all been helpful to the film and building community and mentorship and all of that. But that was 6 years. That terrible film Boyhood, and I'm not afraid to say it was terrible because it was. That was like 12 years, I want to
oh,
say. That was
wow.
on purpose on. That wasn't a doc. Docs can take a very long time, but yeah, that film I think purposefully they wanted it to be a 12-year journey, and I can't
Mm.
imagine doing a fiction film for 12 years. My goodness. But for documentaries, 6 years for me, and I have friends who've been in it for a long time. Because a lot of people,
Mm.
filmmaking, it can be a very hard living to make. So some people have different jobs. I know a lot of people are in academia, and so they'll pick it up. They'll pick up their
Mm.
projects when they have time, and so that might just be
Mm.
summer, and it can be a long road, but it's fulfilling at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think it says a lot to the commitment that you have, right, to sharing the stories, that it would take so long, but you're still committed. But I also can see the genuine relationships that can
Mhm.
be built with people because you're spending so much time with them and, really talking to them and sharing with them. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, when you go into a project, you have in your mind is going to take so many months, so many years, or whatever. You mentioned that funding might be one of the things that holds it up. What other types of things might hold up your project coming into fruition?
Well, you can be working with a company that's just like, it's not there yet. Go back, do it again.
Mm.
Access to people in the film, that can be another thing. But those, I think that's the biggest funding. If you and the company, the production company you're working with, you're not on the same page and they keep telling you to go back, dig deeper, find something else, find another angle. And then sometimes I can't, I'm trying to see what I could say about this one. This isn't my project, but I'm working, I'm I'm working with a company that's working with other filmmakers who are working on a film about a story that's currently in the headlines. But the thing is, because it's currently in the headlines, things keep changing. And so that's
Mm.
kind of dragging out their timeline. So it's exciting because like it's, action, but at the same time, it's like you think you got a lock and then there's a break in the news and it's like, oh, if you don't put this in the story, then it seems incomplete.
Right. Wow. I didn't even think about that. So it would almost be easier to work on a story that has already been completed because you don't have to keep going back. She's like,
That
no.
that is a good point. However, sometimes you want to be the first to tell it. I'm not necessarily that type of filmmaker, but I understand people who are, right? I totally
Mm-hmm.
get it. So I think with them, they want to be the first to have this documentary on this subject out here. But again, you run the risk of it could be playing and then something, is breaking in the background and you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's too late.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay, so we have folks in our community that really are committed to sharing and making sure that we honor stories of people of color. What advice would you give to someone who is looking to get into the industry? I know you had a lot of schooling, right, that you
Mhm.
went through in order to hone your craft.
Mhm.
So if someone is looking to get into the industry on either side of the camera, whether that be acting and all of that, or whether that be the behind the scenes stuff, what advice do you have specifically as a brown girl in the
Mhm.
industry? What advice would you have?
For a brown girl in the industry, there are programs that are set up for us. There's Brown Girl Doc Mafia. That is a group. It started on Facebook actually, and they are very supportive of Black people, Black women, brown women, I'm sorry, specifically in the field. They're a place where you can go to network. They're a place where you can go to find jobs. And now I think they've opened up and they are providing grants and things like that. I don't know that they do workshops. They might. But as someone who has a lot of schooling, you don't have to do that. I would say get a mentor, watch a lot of documentaries, break them down, and see, what type of storyteller you want to be. But then also workshops. You can figure it out in a workshop. You really, really can. So there's that. There are other places like Firelight Media. That's not specifically for women, but it is for filmmakers of color. Black Public Media, they supported me with Commuted, and they provide opportunities and resources as well. Those are the top 3 that I can think of. But what's great is that one will lead you to another, that'll lead you to more and more and more down the road. But those spaces are really important because, especially for Commuted, I feel like we were trying to raise money for a while, and the first big money that came in was Black Public Media. Because they just got it. They didn't say, oh, another prison documentary, because that's not what this is, So those places are really important. But so that's for filmmakers. And in front of the camera, that's tougher because I'm not an actress. But
I loved how you said that, an actress.
But I don't know. I'm a big believer in kind of not reinventing the wheel. And I'm not saying everybody's story is the same, but I like to read stories about other directors and how they approach certain things and how they got into the field. So I would say kind of study your craft, study those actors that you look up to and who you want to be like, whose career you want to emulate, and see how they approached it. I would also say, I think, the more you can work, the more you can shoot, the better. You can film anything with your camera, with your phone now. So there's no excuse for people who want to be filmmakers to not try and just do something small. And you'd be surprised to learn, there are a lot of little community-based filmmaking programs. There's one here in New Orleans called Novak. I don't want to say they're little because they provide so many resources to people, but they're easily accessible is what I mean by little. You don't have to know somebody to get into it. Right. And I feel like things like the Novak, which is New Orleans Video Access Center. There are these little hubs like all around the country. But getting into community, I think, is a big thing. I didn't realize that when I was making my first film. But you really do need cheerleaders because some of it is political. Sometimes the festivals you get into, sometimes the grants that you win, a lot of times that can be political.
I want to pause you right there because I want to ask a follow-up question to that. But Cherry, to your question, I have done some acting, and what I can say is, one, you don't need an agent in order to get into acting. Like Nailah said, it really is about getting connected. It's almost like once you get your foot in the door, your foot is in the door. But something else I would also say, which is why I wanted to make sure that that I did bring you on, Nailah, is the advice that I had gotten when I was acting is learn all sides of the craft, because people have gone from being set designers to, now they need you to hold equipment. So now you're learning that side, right? And then it's like, oh, this is what it looks like to be a producer. This is what it's like to be a director, right? So you get into those communities. So I would definitely say go into your community and find those networks of people, because they usually hold the projects that are looking for people that look like you. I can say when I was in Tampa, I had 2 agents, but because I was in Florida, the market was very Miami. I'm not Miami. Like that's not my aesthetic, right? So even though I had agents, I didn't really have work because the projects were with people who weren't looking for people who look like me. Right.
Yeah.
So it really is about that market and creating those opportunities. So to that, Cherry, definitely go out and also to your point, Nailah, about creating your own stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Like now is a time where social media really has changed so much about the way that people are found and discovered and how projects are out there, whatever. So if you don't have somebody contact you, then you create your own stuff.
Exactly.
And now you're a star, you know, in your own thing. So that would be some advice I would definitely give. So back to what you were saying, Nailah, about the politics.
Oh, yeah.
How do you navigate the politics? So what advice do you have about navigating the politics? You know, I've got this little thing that I filmed on my iPhone. Now I want to get it out into festivals. I really believe, you know, in my project. How do we navigate that part of the industry?
Oh, it can be tough and it can be challenging because sometimes you just want to focus on the art. But what I'm realizing is that you just, if your choice is to be in this industry, you kind of have to just submit yourself to kind of that part of it. And it's, again, it just comes down to the networking and who can you get to kind of really push you. At the end of the day, you do have to have good work. You do. That's the only thing that's going to get you far. But there are certain people who will kind of take up your project and make it their own and say, I really believe in this filmmaker, give them a chance, let them get through. And it can be hard to make those connections, but if you're just starting from the ground level, if it's someone if you want to have a relationship with a film festival, there are always opportunities to volunteer. So you can do that. And then, like Kimberly said, everyone is accessible now. Hit them up on IG if that's really what you want to do. Like, for real. Yeah, just make everyone is accessible now, which I have other thoughts about, but but reach out and make a new friend. No, reach out and just I try and find yourself in the space. But I would also say be prepared. Oh my gosh, in the beginning of kind of understanding this industry, there are so many people who talked about what they could be and what they were going to do, but they never really produced. So I would say really produce. And if you say that you're a filmmaker, have something that they can see. Because there are so many kind of people posing in this industry a lot, but like I said, you don't have an excuse because you have a phone and you can edit on your phone now. You can really make things. And they have films being shot on phones that are in theaters. So don't even say it's the quality. Don't let that. Yeah.
I heard you and I received that. I want you to know within the depths of my spirit. Because so many times I feel like as a creative, and honestly, this space is really new for me. So, you know, when we were in school, I was full on math and science, like doing the things, right? So tapping into this creative space, I always find myself inundated with all these ideas and, I could do this and I could do that and like all the things, right? And it just becomes like an attack on my brain sometimes. But I often talk myself out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I often am like, don't nobody want to hear that. Or why, it's not that deep, or the moment has passed, or whatever. So to hear you say, just create.
Just create,
yeah, it speaks to me because, you know, as an artist, and not necessarily being behind the camera, but just having content that I want to put out that I feel can change the way that people view others or the way that people take perspectives. Sometimes I just be talking myself out of it, and I really need to not do that.
Yeah, you know how they say have the confidence of a mediocre white man?
Like, yeah, girl.
You got to do that because, I mean, if you look, just as someone who's creating like films and TV, if you look at the content that's out there, and there's so much, even like these subpar white comedies that come out, but there's so many of them.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They're just having fun. Just do it. And again, I think just kind of going back to the roots of like, why do you want to do it? Because you're passionate about it, because you love it. That's reason enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's reason enough. So, and it can be hard because, so especially if it's a project where you need people's help and you have to, things like that, and you need more resources. So maybe choose the simpler idea and the easier
Mm-hmm.
project and just get that done and have fun with it.
To
That's
get
the other thing.
started.
Yeah, so many people are
Yeah.
miserable in this industry and nasty, and I just don't get it because really it's like we're doing what we love. Like we get to
Mm.
kind of play with pretty pictures all day. Just like have fun. Have fun.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Like I really feel that in my spirit. I thank you for saying that. What would you say is the biggest growth point that you have had since coming into the industry? So now, 20 years later, you've been working. Like, what would be the area that you feel like you've grown the most?
I would say the human part of it. You know what? Because I sometimes I'm like, because documentaries are hard, and like I told you, the time commitment can be hard. And I do think I need a break, and I want to just give myself time to write next. But I don't think that I would have grown as much as a human being if I did not have to encounter these people
Mm,
who've had very different life experiences than me, and have to work with them and kind of in a way get inside of their experience and their minds, get in their hearts, and really try and understand. Because that's the other thing too. You have to. I think anyway, for me, in order to be a successful director and have these experiences with people, I have to be very humble.
right.
Sometimes they'll say things to you, and I can't say anything back, and I'm not necessarily
Mm,
that type of person. Like
mm,
if you tell me something, I kind of want to, the same energy. I'm trying to return that, but
yeah.
I can't do that in filmmaking.
Mm,
Sometimes you have to take it. And you not only have to take it, you kind of have to try and understand um,
mm,
where they're coming from and like really hear them. Uh,
mm.
of course, you don't want to let people be abusive, but
Right.
that is where I find myself. And so for me, it's that pivot about what does success look like. And you hit the nail on the head when you said integrity. That's
Mhm.
big, 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 big thing. Like, can I live with myself? Not only can they live
Mm.
with me, can I live with myself and how I treated them in this experience?
Yeah.
And then, and for me, that's the biggest part of success. And then knowing that I'm walking on the path that God has for me. And if I'm doing it with integrity, then I know I am. And really just kind of trusting and resting in that. And that's something
Mm.
I'm learning more now. At the end of last year, I was having I never really wrestled with anxiety, but the end of last year, I was coming off of a year of working on 3 projects, and I'm thinking if I'm working on 3 projects, that's great. I'm getting so much out there, this and that. But it really took a toll on me from a physical standpoint, and then a
Mhm.
one too, because you're stretching yourself so thin. And so I became a little bit more anxious. And again, that joy left my part of the work. And so I really just had to sit with myself and say, okay, how do I want to approach these? How do I want to
Mhm.
live with this day to day? Because I can't be anxious about this all the time. Like
Right.
that's not right. And so yeah, it's a long conversation we're gonna have to have with ourselves. What does success look like now? What does it look like this part of my life? I think one of the biggest. I'm gonna do just a real quick plug to my cousin Dawn Jefferson. She just started a podcast called Living Swindled, but she talks about these 90s TV shows
Mhm.
that would make you think that when you're in your 20s, life is going to be like this, or your love life is going to be a certain way. But Kimberly is kind of swirling, so I don't know if she's still on, or I don't know if I'm still on. But I think one of the biggest learning lessons is kind of getting into later in life, past your 20s, past your 30s, and realizing that you're constantly learning and growing and evolving, and that you don't have it all figured out at 25. I don't know if you all can see me. I'm still here. I don't know if Kimberlyn is. Hey. Okay. Was I still there?
Yeah.
I was still there. All right. I was about to mess around with my Wi-Fi. I'm glad I didn't, because I would have, who knows what would have happened with that. But my point that I was making was that we're constantly evolving and learning. and that we're not going to have it all figured out at 25, which we probably all know now. But and that's one of the biggest misconceptions of life, that, you know, and for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself, like I should have it figured out. Or even when I was getting anxious about stuff, I'm like upset with myself for that. But no, got to be gentle and learn how this life thing is working for you and how you're going to work it.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I was going to ask you like what self-care looks like for you. Because what I think I'm starting to realize, just as I do these shows every other week and I'm talking to women in different industries, is we're all kind of coming up against the same types of situations, right? Feeling like we have to defend who we are, overreaching ourselves. Maybe our boundaries aren't so much intact. So it's showing up no matter how we work, like we're in those situations. So I appreciate you bringing that up, especially as someone, I found myself having anxiety as well over the past couple years, and was very like, what is this?
Right. Like, that's why you say, wait, hold on. But, you know.
Yeah. And it's really jarring, right? But I think to even normalize the conversations and saying like it is okay to take a step back, right? And again, I think if I've taken anything away from this, is thinking back to how we define success for ourselves. What does that look like? Because if I can remove the pressure off of myself, then I can show up very free and peaceful in this space, as opposed to feeling like I'm chasing some idea that maybe isn't even mine of what success looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huge.
So tell the people, a couple folks said like, where can they see your things? Like, and what, I know you mentioned you're working on a couple projects now. So what should we be looking out for, and where can we go to find the things that are already out?
I'll be sure to keep you updated. Unfortunately, nothing that I've worked on right now is in distribution. Some things are in libraries. You know, it's funny. I just got an email that Vanishing Pearls is going to play somewhere in June. And I'm like, who approved that? So I have to call those people and figure that out. But anyway, Commuted, I'm hoping it'll be ready and in the festival circuit 2023. Probably the same for the model project. I have future work coming to PBS and HBO. And what's funny is my only film that has distribution right now is on American Airlines. Isn't that interesting?
Really?
So, I directed a film about the descendants of the Tulsa Race Massacre. It's a short film. It's called Descended from the Promised Land. And it like I said, it just talks to the descendants, and it really draws a thread from 100 years ago to, well, it's going to be 101 years at the end of May to now, and how the impacts of the Tulsa Race Massacre have reverberated through generations. But that was picked up by the American Black Film Festival. That's another resource, American Black Film Festival, Urban World Film Festival. But it was picked up by American Black Film Festival, and they have a collection of films available on American Airlines flights. So if any of you are flying American Airlines, you can see Descended from the Promised Land there. Oh, I fly them next month. Oh. So that's it. But other things I think will be available 2023. So nothing right now, but soon enough. Yeah.
Okay, so y'all, if you go to Nailah's website, though, you can see some of the past projects, and then there are links, for instance, to Descended from the Promised Land. One of the links is there, so you can go and check out the information about the movie, and just kind of get immersed in this brown girl boss storytelling that is happening over here. So definitely want to make sure that you keep us in the loop, Nailah, even if it looks like doing some type of viewing party or anything. Like we are down for all of that here at Beautiful Brown Girls. And I told you, our community is so supportive. They just want to know what they can do to amplify Black women, amplify stories, right? So this is the perfect community, like, to get you connected to. So you are officially a member of the Beautiful Brown Girl family.
I love it.
Yes. So we definitely want to make sure that you keep us in the loop of all the things, because we definitely want to be able to support everything that you're doing, because this is some amazing work. And I don't know that we all have, prior to having this conversation with you, recognized how much work goes in
Mhm.
to bringing these these projects to screen.
Mhm.
So I thank you for giving us some insight into that, because
Yeah.
this is truly, I can tell, like a work of love. Like you really
Mhm.
have to have your heart into what you're doing, just simply on the time commitment that you have to make in order to bring it through.
Right. Yeah. It's
Yeah, so definitely, again, want you to make sure that you keep us posted on that stuff. Those of you who are new connecting to us, I do want to take a moment to make sure that I let you know how you can get connected to Beautiful Brown Girls. So if you go to beautifulbrowngirls.com, you'll be able to see, let me take this off of here so you all can see this whole image. You'll be able to see everything that we have going on. We started out as in-person brunch chapters. We actually just recently started a chapter in New Orleans. So all of our New Orleans folk definitely have to get you connected into our BBG chapter there. But if you go to beautifulbrowngirls.com, you'll be able to see that, see if you have a chapter in your area. Also, if you'll like us on Facebook at Beautiful Brown Girls, and we have a Facebook group called Beautifully Shaded. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Beautifully Shaded and on Twitter at Beautiful Brown U. So that will give you an opportunity to connect with us there. We also have a VIP members network, and in our members network, we provide different opportunities, such as different classes that you can take, book club, fitness classes. We have had makeup classes, wine tasting classes. Like, we've got all types of stuff. Plus, you get discounts and first knowings about all the things that we have going on. So if you go to members.beautifulbrowngirls.com, you will be able to connect with us there as well. And then I would love for you to connect with me. So you can go to kimberlynjackson.com, or on my Instagram at KimberlynJ, or mindinmyblackassbusiness.com. I'm in all of those spaces as well. So having said that, Nailah, final words that you would like to leave with the community. If they didn't get anything else, this is what you want to leave them with. What would that be?
I think I would just go back to the point of creating success that works for you. It's not the same for everybody. And being comfortable and really resting and kind of delighting in that. That's one of the big takeaways for me. Every morning I'm trying to just do that. But I want to say thank you. This has been fun. I'm so proud of you. It's been 20 years. And I follow you on Instagram. I'm like, Kimberlyn's in Mexico. But I'm so thrilled for you. But this is wonderful. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. It has been a pleasure. Like I said, I've been following you as well. So it's always good to know, like, we have people that we're connected to that are like home. And so even when I reached out, you're like, of course, anything. Right. So definitely am just so grateful. And I know that our community is going to be inspired to really start creating. I know that's the one takeaway that I have, that is kind of sitting on the forefront of things. Just create. Just create.
And I just want to say again, one of the biggest these white people have us thinking this game is rigged. You got to be some type of genius to be a director. No. You just have the will to create, really. Now, the access part is the hard part. That's they make it tricky, but they're no more imaginative, or they're not smarter, they're not more disciplined, they're not more anything than us, but they will have you thinking that. And no, I said, that ain't it. That ain't it.
Man, I feel that. Like you said, have the confidence of a mediocre white man. Okay.
Yeah.
That is where we
I talk to him almost every. Let me stop.
Okay, look, no, I understand, girl. There have been many times where I'm
I like working.
I'm definitely the smartest person in this room right now. But that's a thing. And that's something I think as Black women and brown women in these spaces that we have to continue to encourage each other and continue to make sure that we are reminding each other of our greatness and what we see when we look at each other, because the world will have us out here thinking that we are mediocre when we are actually the magic. Okay.
Girl,
Okay. So having said that, thank you so much again for hanging out with us. BBG family, we will be back on Monday. So we'll have another episode of Brown Conversations with Sab and I. You get to see all our shenanigans and talk about all the stuff that's happening out here in this world. And then 2 weeks from now, we'll be back with our next episode of Brown Girl Boss. And we'll be on with Nikisha. And Nikisha is a branding specialist. I actually met her when I went to Colombia. And she is a part of the reason that I now live in Mexico. So I am going to be super excited to introduce you all to her. Nailah, thank you again. You are the best. And we will definitely be in touch. Absolutely. Brown Girl family, we love you. Thank you all for always riding with us. And I will see you soon. So,
bye, everyone.
Night, y'all.